And welcome. We're into the studio for Harlem Sculpture Garden again. And we have a special guest with us today. We have NIA Mozee, who's a floral designer. And what makes this so special, she is going to be flower bombing a few of our sculptures for Harlem Sculpture Gardens. This is like a really exciting thing. So, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much, Naya, for coming into the studio.
Thank you for having me. I
Oh,
appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
oh, this is great. And it was funny. I was speaking to Mark Wilson,
Hmm.
who's also a floral designer who will be joining us in the studio. And I said, Mark, what do you think if we were to flower bomb some of the sculptures? And he said, that's a very interesting concept, Savannah, to do that. It would be kind of cool. He said, why don't you send me some images? And then we could talk about it. So I sent him the presentation deck that we had at that time, most, not all of the sculptures. Within minutes, Mark called me back. He said, Savannah, this is really cool.
Hmm.
Let me reach out to some other floral designers to see who might be interested. I think this would be a very, good thing for Harlem. And so that's why you are here. And this is not your first rodeo doing flower bombing. So
No.
why don't you tell us a little bit first how you got into becoming a floral designer and then some of the past flower bombs you've done, which are a form of public art.
Yes. I actually started in interior design.
Oh,
So I've had a few transitions before I got into events. I felt like events was like an extension of interior design because you're still designing a space.
mm-hmm.
And then I just carried that into flowers. That's my happy place.
Okay.
It's where I feel most at home, and I love creating and love. Like I'm like a kid in the candy store. When I go to the flower market, I'm like ooh ooh ooh, and I have to like shut my eyes so that I don't get extra things. And I always have flowers after an event. I always have flowers at home. It brings joy. So I
Yes.
like the fact that it brings joy.
Okay. I love flowers too. From a child, I was a gardener. Me and my uncle were the gardeners in the
I
family.
don't have a green thumb though. I can
Oh,
keep a fresh flower alive weeks, but plants are not my jam. I don't know. I don't know why.
really?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Now, you just brought up an interesting thing. The flower market, is that still here in New
Yes.
York?
Absolutely. I was just there 2 weeks ago.
No, the reason I'm saying is because one of the concerns I have in New York, particularly over the last three mayors we've had, a lot of what used to be in New York and accessible to people has, gone under attack. The garment district in particular,
Hmm.
they have gone under attack. There is no longer a millinery district anymore. And then I noticed that certain flower shops, in the flower market district were no longer there. And I just felt it was such a shame because these businesses were very vital. It wasn't just for commercial, it was also for personal.
Hmm.
You could go and you could buy things in
Pick up.
bulk. When I was a little girl, my mother took me and my sister to the millinery district. So that's how I learned how to buy hats, wear it, get sized for it. And then the garment districts, there are thousands of New Yorkers who could tell you about relatives who worked in the garment district. It was amazing how, if you didn't like working for a particular factory, you could quit that morning and have another job by that afternoon, same day.
Yeah.
But all of that is gone. And I did try to help some of the businesses in the garment district. I met some of the families. I think it was 2016, 2017. I got my first tour in the garment district where I was invited to one of the factories. I was so excited. I
Yeah.
dressed up for the occasion because
Yay.
who gets to
You don't get to
go
go there. Hmm.
anymore? And those poor people were telling us how Bloomberg and de Blasio was really pushing them out. I understood why Mayor Bloomberg didn't understand. I thought he grew up in New York City to find out he grew up in Boston. And then that made sense for me that he had no history of it. But I felt that de Blasio should have had some understanding about that because you must have had at least one relative. Everyone used to have at least one relative that worked in the garment district, but it just didn't seem to resonate with him. So it's good to know that the flower market is still here. Where is it located now?
It is a bit more condensed. I am originally from Buffalo, so I've been in New York City since 2006.
Okay.
So back then, it was much more grand. Now it's still on 28th Street.
Right.
But it's literally one block now.
Ah.
So like it's like a block and a half. Like it's Broadway to 6th and then 6 to 7.
Okay.
You can find a few, other places here and there around the same area, but it's definitely not as extensive as it was. It's a lot more hotels.
Yes.
It's a lot more food places. That's over there. But 28th Street is they're still holding on.
They're still holding on.
They're still holding on.
I also heard just recently that New York City is going to have International Tulip Day.
It passed.
It already passed.
It passed. If I'm not mistaken, they give out tulips in Union Square.
Okay. But it was just the fact that they were having that sort of day, which I thought was interesting because a lot of people don't know that when 9/11 took place, the Dutch Netherlands donated 1 million daffodil bulbs in honor of those poor souls that had died during that disaster. And they kept giving daffodil bulbs every single year. And I thought it was interesting, daffodils versus tulips, because you think of tulips with the Dutch Netherlands. But I know that daffodils are more hardy and they split and propagate, where tulips, you may get 1 to 3 years out of them. But okay, this is good to know that there still is a thriving industry here. All right. So now tell us, what made you decide to do a flower bomb?
I think it's funny. I actually did. I was inspired by a designer here, Lewis Miller Design, who does flower flashes all over the city as well. And so I actually did one in my neighborhood. And even just seeing a black girl outside, like, doing flowers, it was, like, unheard of. People were so excited, like, asking for flowers. Sure, absolutely, you can have flowers. And, like, it was up so people could walk by and enjoy.
Now, what neighborhood are you in?
I'm in Crown Heights in Brooklyn.
Okay, all right.
So it was just nice to it was like me giving back. It was leftover from an event, but it was like me giving back to my small community. And they got to enjoy and take pictures. And so it's about bringing the joy. Even this year for Valentine's Day, we had 2 give backs for the community, different neighborhoods in Brooklyn.
That's lovely. In fact, we have a couple of samples of some flower bombs you have done. We're going to share those.
So there was a flower show, Leaf Flower Show.
Yes.
In the Meatpacking District. So
Yes.
I participated. I missed it pre-COVID. And then, of course, COVID happened. So they brought it back in 2021 and 2022. So I participated. That just reinvigorated me for flowers and events because it was such an amazing experience. So this was 2022, and they also had sponsorships in the area.
Oh.
So businesses that are in the area sponsor designers to do floral installations. So my sponsorship was from the Google store.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were coming up with ideas, and they were like, "Oh, we had this bike." I was like, "It would be cool, and people could come and they could like pose on it and get on top of it, and then kind of give exposure." So also bringing traffic to the Google store and then tying it back to the neighborhood and the flower show.
Okay. So that's very great. Because I tried to partner with the Leaf Flower, but most of their installations were downtown.
Yes.
You couldn't get them to come uptown.
No, it's all around the Meatpacking District.
Okay.
Because it's that bid that is behind it.
Behind it. Okay. So that's why what you're about to do for us is so special. And what made you so excited about doing flower bombing for us?
Because I want to bring it to the community. They already got to see it in Manhattan.
Well, Lower Manhattan.
You know, so everyone loves flowers. Like so many, especially during COVID, like I
Yeah.
got into retail flowers. I wasn't into retail. And people were buying flowers or having tutorials and learning about flowers and like Trader Joe's. And I tell, if you want to have flowers in your home, go to Trader Joe's. Play
Okay.
around just to have, because it brings so much joy. It's actually super peaceful, at least for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
to be doing something with your hands and then to see the
Yes.
beauty.
Yes. Yes. In fact, they said that gardening was the number one activity during COVID. I did contract COVID, and I was very sick, and they told me, the doctors, okay, you can start to go outside now. And when they did, I said, can I garden? Because I garden also tree pits. And they said, you could do it as long as you don't exhaust yourself. Once you feel tired, then just stop. But yeah, it was like the number one activity. And I think it changed people
Yeah,
quite a bit, wouldn't you say?
I think so. I think people like appreciated creating something on their own,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost it's super intimate
Okay.
to like be in your space and making it, because we were home for so long.
Yes.
That's your sanctuary.
Yes.
So how do you treat your sanctuary?
Okay. Now, your normal practice, though, is different. You do certain types of specialty events. What types of specialty events do you do?
We do all social occasions, weddings, birthdays, all the celebrations, and then a few of these, like this is
We're going to
here.
show a couple of those images. Great.
So this here is an installation for Fashion Week. So we also do production during New York Fashion Week, and we got the opportunity for the last 2 seasons to do flowers for Bibu collection for their show in
Okay.
September, and then this is February. So this was in February, this was in September,
Mm-hmm.
and that was always a dream.
Oh.
So I got to fulfill a dream. So, and it's also just getting more exposure, getting to do what you love. Like if I could do flowers all day,
You would do it.
I would do it all day.
Okay. Great. Now, you have decided to select some sculptures, and we'll add those later, that you find quite interesting. And you picked some of the bigger ones.
Okay.
You picked the red XOXO by Miguel Otero Fuentes. That's a beautiful piece, and it means hugs and kisses. Hugs and kisses. You also have selected one of my favorites. I have dreamt of being a tree by Mr. B. Moon. It's a beautiful deer with a very elongated antlers, where the antlers start to turn into a tree. What were you thinking when you saw those sculptures?
It reminded me, especially for the deer, it reminded me of like cherry blossoms. Like when they're blooming, and it reminded me of the cherry blossom trees that you see, and then they're bare, and then all of a sudden they bloom. So that one I think spoke to me probably the most.
Okay.
Because it reminded me of the blooms that you see around the city.
Okay.
You know, the
okay.
changing of the seasons.
Yes,
Almost.
that's why I like spring the best.
Spring and summer are my favorite. Spring is my favorite season.
Yeah, I like spring because you start to see the trees budding, and for many of them, particularly I think it's ginkgo, where the flowers start off as white.
Yes.
And then
turn
they
pink.
turn, the different colors, and then finally green. So I kind of like seeing that transition that goes on. The other one, for Miguel's piece, what resonated with you regarding that one?
The color. The color spoke to me. And now that I know the meaning, it's even more, because flowering that is like giving it some hugs and kisses. It's kind of like symbolic to what it means, and like adding some more love to it.
Okay.
And the shapes, I was just trying to figure out how would I flower them. And I picked based on shapes that I thought spoke to me.
It's two like oval shapes that are embedded into
Coming
each
together.
other, and then depending on where you stand, if you face it in the front, it looks like a heart. And so, yes, that's a great piece that Miguel has put together, made out of steel, for which he did himself. He actually fabricated the work
Wow.
himself. But what I like about that piece, he when it first was placed, I had that piece placed on Governor's Island. He brought his entire family. So his
Yay.
father flew up from Puerto Rico. He had another brother that came from another part of the country. There were friends that was helping, assistants that were helping, and it just brought all these people together. So you felt that energy,
You feel the love.
for that piece. Okay, that's good. And then the third piece you're interested in is by Jalika Yancey, Perched and Knotted, which kind of, moves into a tree. And part of her practice is dealing with it from an African American perspective, about natural dying. And a lot of people don't even know that natural dyeing came to this country because of many of the African slaves that were brought here, and they knew how to grow indigo. Uh, did you know that at
No,
all?
I had no idea.
Yes. Are you familiar with indigo dyeing?
No,
You're not.
no.
Okay, so this will be a discovery for you as well.
Oh my, that makes me more torn. That makes me more torn because the deer would be like the probably typical choice because you see it already. You see the vision already.
Mm-hmm.
Even though this is a tree, the story behind it,
Mm-hmm.
and there's not so many indigo like flower like.
Well, indigo needs a lot of space
Mm-hmm.
to grow. It needs a lot of heat, a lot of sun. It's bushy, so it needs a lot of space. That's why you find it more in the south than you would up here, because even though it can grow in the north, you need a lot of land for it to amount
And we
to
have
to doing any natural dyeing with it. But yeah, it's a very hardy plant. A lot of people don't know also that in America, our first commercial successful crop was not cotton, it was rice, and then indigo, and then cotton.
and then cotton. Wow.
And the first crop was tobacco, but it wasn't as good of a grade as you could get elsewhere. But it was rice, indigo, and then you had cotton. So this is great. What advice would you give to anyone who's thinking about doing something as creative as interior design or flower design?
You have to love it. So if even if you're scared, I just was having this conversation with my nephew, and I'm like, just try. You never know what you are going to fall in love with, what you're going to like. My nana used to do a lot of silk florals, and I found a book when I was in high school. From when I was in high school, I was a debutante, and it asked what you wanted to be, and I said interior designer or fashion designer. So how funny that now I kept that all the way through college, and then now into my professional career, and then I'm working now in design and fashion. So it kind of is like a full circle moment. So you just have to try. Everyone doesn't know what they want to do so early, but just try.
I feel that most people don't know what they want to do at all.
Yeah.
You know, we are discouraged from being creative. Just doing, typical occupations,
Right.
being a lawyer, being a doctor,
Being a lawyer, doctor,
being a
teacher.
teacher. And that lacks, imagination, that lacks freedom to experiment. And I feel that that's kind of like a disservice. And I think what you're trying to do is show people possibilities, wouldn't you
There's
say?
endless possibilities. Absolutely. There are endless possibilities. You don't have to just the typical, even when you're an entrepreneur, there's still also certain paths that people go down when they want to be an entrepreneur. And it's like, you could be a set designer. That's an extension of interior design. You could be, there's so many different types of florists. There's retail florists. There's an event florist. There's an installation florist.
Right.
There are people who have a career where they just freelance, which means they work with other florists. They help you bring your vision to life.
Right.
So there's so many possibilities. Just tip the toe in, put the foot in,
And try
and
it.
try.
Now, do you have a retail space, or are you
We're home based.
Okay.
We're home based, but we do offer retail.
Okay.
So people can order retail, and we deliver in Brooklyn and Manhattan.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Your model of business doesn't have to be a storefront.
No, it does not. Well, COVID taught me that.
Oh, really?
So I didn't arrive there until, I mean, I was always a home based business.
Mm-hmm.
But realizing, like, how do you pivot? COVID was really about the pivot. I know people are tired of hearing that
No,
word,
no,
but
it's true.
it was really, really, really about the pivot. And I was trying to figure out, like, oh my goodness, because the world shut down, what am I
Yeah.
going to do?
Right.
How am I going to be able to not go crazy and share my gifts? And,
And then so many people just stop doing things. Did that happen for you? They just stopped?
Absolutely. Events was
Well,
completely
events, yes, but
shut
did you
down.
find that people were still yearning for flowers and were looking for other ways to connect?
That kept my business afloat during
Okay.
COVID. Retail, floral. I was able to get on platforms and get customers because people wanted to do something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially since we couldn't really connect. But if you're thinking about someone and you like, I was thinking about you and I decided to send you some flowers, it still allows you to have a form of connection with people, even though you couldn't have it in the present and in the physical.
Do you, I'm just out of curiosity, do you supply flower clubs? You know, like how they have wine clubs?
I have been thinking about it. I did do some flower classes during COVID. So I
Ooh.
did virtual classes.
I was going to say, was it virtual?
It was virtual. And we have potentially upcoming class for Mother's Day.
Ah.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
In person this time.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And that's kind of hard too, right?
Yeah. But it's fun because you get to share with people because I think you don't know what you don't know. People, everyone wants roses. Or you know what I mean? Like
because that's simple. They
because
know.
it's simple. They know a rose. But there's so many different varieties of flowers. So it's when you do those kinds of things and installations, you get to pick the non-traditional items that, you know, for special occasions you don't get to pick.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to have much more creative freedom.
Okay, this is great to know because I thought about that because one of the things COVID showed me was that we could make some changes in the way we live. And in a lot of communities of color, it's a very harsh life. And it doesn't have to be. But what if we found a way to soften, you know, that harshness and give people some hope? And that's what we are hoping with you flower bombing some of our installations, that you're actually giving people some hope to say, this is in my community, not downtown, not where rich folks are living, right here in my community.
Yep.
I can also have that kind of beauty. I can have that kind of hope. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming, joining us here in the studio. We are looking forward to this. And why don't you give us like your website so that way we know how we can contact you in the future.
My website is simplyniadesign.com, and it's Nia, N-I-A.
Mm-hmm.
We are on Instagram, simply N, just the initial N, design.
Mm-hmm.
We are on Uber Eats.
Oh, really?
So you can order flowers on Uber Eats. That was another thing that came from COVID. So, and that's it. We go all over. Wherever people want flowers, we're happy to spread that joy.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Nia, for joining us today. And we are excited.
Thank you for having me.
Flower bombing in Harlem Sculpture Gardens. So thank you so
Yay.
much.
Thank you.